Hi, my name is Jeff Groon, Director of Financial Aid here at the Wharton School. We're going to talk today about financial planning for your Wharton MBA. At any time during this presentation, feel free to submit your questions. We'll be reviewing them throughout, and we can answer them at the end of this session today. First are some expectations of what you can get out of this session today. First is to determine the personalized cost of your attendance. This includes the standard budget that's on our website, plus the additional items which go hand in hand with those. Next, we'll discuss how to research and implement your financial plan. This includes both funding sources internally, externally, loan options, and other availability of funding and work options. Next, we'll go through how to utilize the tools which are currently available in our office, across the MBA program, and external on websites. And finally, the end goal is to maximize your investment in your Wharton MBA and in your experience during the program at that time. First thing we're going to look at is your first year cost of attendance. This is based on 2016, so you'll see it's a combination of tuition and fees, which includes all the mandatory fees, including preterm, clinical fee, general fee, and also the estimated cost outside of those tuition and fees. So the cost of attendance is established to provide your borrowing availability in the program. This bottom section may be different for each individual student. So it's important to look at those items, find where you are in that scale, and budget accordingly. One of the biggest areas of flexibility is your rental expense. So this assumes $1,600 per month, but if you can find an apartment for less, that's an area where you may be able to save as you look at this total budget. Finally, our office is here should anything arise, any questions you get. While you're a student in the program, our office will be here for student advising, counseling to help you work through this budget. So moving forward, this kind of moves into your overall personalized cost of attendance. That base cost of attendance at the top line is pulled from that first slide. What you want to recognize here is that there's many different revenue and expense sources that aren't included in that budget. Some great programs that are highly valued by our current students in the program. An important thing to realize is that these programs may not be part of that initial budget, so it's something you'll either have to save for, request a budget increase for, or find funding opportunities to cover those additional expenses. These categories are broken up based on focus groups with students, discussions with students, and I'll go through them briefly now. First is global and academic programs. We have global emerging programs, global modular courses, and many academic programs like Semester in San Francisco, which are great experiences but do add a cost to the program. With these costs, these specifically are available to borrow additional money in order to pay for these. There's also career and leadership treks, which are great experiences offered in many different areas around the world. In addition, you're going to come up with social events, club dues and fees, and then as you get later into your first year and into your second year, the recruiting costs are going to come up associated with both your internship as well as your career after you graduate. Finally, you have your bucket which exists today, which is all your personal and travel costs, which you may want to retain while you're in the program. So there are all the costs that may be additional to your programming, but there's also revenue sources out there, which we'll get into a little more deeply later. These include our fellowship program, outside scholarships and sponsorships, work and fellow opportunities while you're currently in the program, summer internship after your first year of being in the program, as well as the loan options available. All of this combines for your net cost of attendance. We brought in two students today. One will show you a pre-recorded video, but I have Sonia here to go into detail about her experience of looking at what did it look like from enrollment through their first year in the program. Sonia?
Great, thank you. So hi everyone, my name is Sana. I am a first-year student, and I'll go over my background just briefly because that will help determine some of the advice that I have for prospective students that are looking to come to business school. So I am originally from Niantic, Connecticut. I worked in management consulting before business school, and I am hoping this summer to get an internship at a startup to hopefully go into the tech sector or the intersection of social impact and the tech sector long term. Now, what that means for me is that before I came to Wharton, especially after I got in, it was very, very important to really build out a budget that evaluated and assessed my true cost of attendance, because I am financing my education on my own, and it was very important to me to know what that true cost was. Now, I have a couple of different pieces of advice for prospective students that are looking to finance their MBA on their own, and here's what I would like to say. So there are three major pieces of advice that I have. One, I would definitely recommend that you start early in the process in terms of evaluating all of your options. So what that meant for me is that I met with our financial aid office at Wharton right after I got admitted. I had a fellowship, a Wharton fellowship that offset some of my costs, and I was in constant communication with the financial aid office, and I met with them again when I started school, just to make sure that I was aware of all of my options and that I had people in the administration in the financial aid office advising me. Secondly, when I got into Wharton, I started talking to second-year students, current students who had already been through the process, and these students were able to help me figure out where were there additional fellowships or financial aid opportunities, scholarships, things like that are external to Wharton, that would help me finance my career. So there were a number of external sources of funding that other people advised me to apply to even before I started, and that really helped me get a holistic sense of what options I had available for additional revenue outside of the Wharton Fellowship. So the second thing I would say, and this is my biggest piece of advice, is really, as Jeff already mentioned, it's all about your personalized cost of attendance. So the first and foremost, you really need to determine your priorities while you're in business school. And that means different things for different people. For myself, I broke it out into three major categories. One was the academic experience, two, my career and recruiting process, and then three, I thought about clubs and social opportunities while in business school, trying to build a network of peers as a third separate category. So in the academic bucket, I thought about whether or not I wanted to do a semester in San Francisco or study abroad or do some of these global modular courses that Jeff already talked about. Now, all of this information is available on the Wharton website, and that was really my first stop in trying to determine which opportunities I would really want to do and which I wouldn't. And the ones that I wanted to do, I included in my budget up front, so I knew that that would be an additional expense that I would be incurring, whether in my first year or my second year. Second, I looked at career opportunities. Because I, in particular, am trying to intern for a startup, I knew coming into business school that I would need to network within the industry that I'm looking at, and that meant a lot of trips to New York City and to San Francisco while I was attending school in Philadelphia. So I calculated a whole separate budget line item for travel expenses for recruiting purposes in particular. At Wharton, there are so many amazing opportunities to recruit, and I knew coming in that I would be participating in career treks with other students to go visit companies and learn more about what they do. And third, again, on the clubs and social front, there are a number of phenomenal opportunities at Wharton, and you'll hear current students talking about them all the time. So one is our annual ski trip. We have black tie events, parties, things like that. All of those, if they are held in the city, often can range. There can be an entry cost from anywhere from free $0 all the way up to $70, $80, $100, and that's something that you should just keep in mind by talking to current students who've been through the program. And everyone's priorities are different. For me, I knew my first year I wanted to experience all of those things. I know that maybe next year, I may not participate again in Red and Blue Ball, or I may not pay the dues for some of the professional clubs that I paid for this year, but that was all taken into account in advance. And then third, my last piece of advice is to really budget out everything that you think is going to be an expense and a source of revenue. And that means that's a living document. So my budget for me throughout my first year, I revisit it every month, especially when it comes time to pay tuition. So I know exactly how much funding I have left, what sources of revenue are coming in, what amounts of money I have coming in from loans, and then how I'm going to build out my budget over the next several months. And I really revisit that document over and over again, so I have a good sense of my holistic cost of attendance on a consistent basis.
Great, thank you very much. I think that was a great summary of what to look for as you come into the program and how you're thinking during your first year of the program. What I'm going to bring up now is a video from Michelle Claxton, a second-year student who couldn't be here today to speak of trade-offs because she's in class. So we pre-recorded this, and we're going to go into detail kind of about her whole experience in the program.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle. I am a current second year here at the Wharton School, and to give you a little bit of background about myself before we dive into some of my decisions around how I kind of made certain trade-offs at Wharton and built out my Wharton experience based on my finances. I grew up in Los Angeles, California. I then went to the University of California, Berkeley, up in the Bay Area. Spent 5 years in San Francisco doing healthcare consulting. And then over the summer and after Wharton, I'll be going to Google back in San Francisco doing a people operations role. So I kind of thought through some of I think one of the most important things I want to stress to prospective students or incoming students is thinking about what are your priorities for the next 2 years. So in your Wharton career, there are going to be certain things that are going to be really important, either recruiting, social, academics, and depending on how you prioritize some of those different pillars is really going to shape what your experience looks like and what activities you choose to opt into, as well as what money you spend in doing those activities. So from my perspective, recruiting was really important. I also prioritized travel and social pretty highly, and I would say clubs was somewhere in the middle, and then academics was also somewhere in the middle. Luckily, academics doesn't cost additional above tuition, so I'm not really going to cover that too much. Jeff has already spoken about some of the main kind of pillars of different activities or different costs on campus that are not really currently included in the tuition. So I'm just going to go through some of those groupings and really explain to you how I made certain decisions in terms of what money to spend or what money not to spend on those areas. So first, club dues and fees. I think that is kind of a big expense that people can get caught up in when they come on campus. I probably have like medium level club involvement, and I think that was really triggered by how much clubs cost and then how much time you can spend participating in the clubs. So you obviously want to derive the most value from the clubs. You don't want to pay for a lot of club memberships without being able to participate and use the services or the programming of those clubs. First year, you're probably going to be really heavily involved in some professional clubs. Those are kind of a must expense, I would say, depending on what you're recruiting for. They do a lot of good like industry buffers. They get you really caught up on what's going on in certain companies, what the recruiting is like. They do a ton of prep in terms of, if you're doing something finance, they'll teach you how to build the models and get you prepped up for those interviews and get you really ready to go into that. And it's a super high touch club. They will do a lot with the second years. So having the second years really train the first years and getting them kind of ready to go and into the industry. My first year, I actually joined 11 clubs, mostly professional, a few social clubs that I just wanted to use to kind of meet people that had similar interests. And I spent close to $400 on dues. I specifically opted out of a few more expensive clubs. Some of the athletic clubs can be pretty costly because of field time, but I opted out of those knowing that I wasn't going to be able to really dedicate a lot of time to showing up on a weekly basis to games or participating fully. And so the money that it required versus the time that I could give it didn't really make sense for me. Second year, I had a job, a lot more time, a lot more ability to participate. So I then actually did 8 clubs. I spent a little bit less at 330, and I really chose to kind of prioritize the social clubs that I enjoyed, as well as some of those more expensive athletic clubs that I wanted to join, and now I really had the time to go to the IM games and participate fully and get to know the team. A third focus is career and leadership treks. I have done both a leadership venture, so a leadership trek, as well as a couple different career treks. Depending on what you're recruiting for, some of these career treks could be more or less important for your recruiting cycle. So for instance, a lot of people going to recruit for tech in San Francisco or PE in San Francisco, it's pretty important for them to get face-to-face time and to get out there. It's definitely not necessary, but if that's something that is going to be the case for you, you might want to think about flights from Philadelphia and what that might look like in terms of lodging. That's all going to be out of pocket. I luckily only did 2 different career treks to New York, so pretty low cost, but still, train tickets, a full day in New York. Depending on how active you want to be in these, that's going to add up. So you really need to consider it because it is going to be fully out of pocket for you. Leadership trek, I did the New Zealand coast to coast leadership venture. I absolutely loved it. I did not come into Wharton thinking I was going to do a leadership venture. It's the type of travel that I would do on my own and have done on my own, so it didn't feel like it justified the price tag for me. I made that decision first year and did not go. I then talked to a lot of my classmates. I thought more about it. I decided that doing a leadership venture was actually going to be something I really wanted to do, and it was probably going to add a lot to my personal growth and professional growth here at Wharton. So I kind of reshifted some of my budget for personal travel and then moved it into the leadership trek budget line item that didn't exist before, so that I could kind of justify and feel comfortable with that expense without having to really stretch the bank. So I did the leadership venture over winter break. I made that decision and opted to not travel over spring break to help kind of defer some of that cost, unlike some of my classmates who did smaller trips or less expensive trips for both breaks. Another aspect is recruiting costs. So similar to career treks, there are a lot of costs about recruiting that are really out of pocket. Obviously, if you're interviewing for a company, most major companies will pay to get you from Philadelphia to your interview location, and they'll pay for whatever costs you incur that day. But everything leading up to that point is really on you. So the networking events and everything leading up to the final interview is, again, on you. So if you're taking cabs to different networking events or meeting people up for coffee and you offer to buy them coffee, if you are going to New York to try to get FaceTime with people, that's completely out of pocket. I would say the degree to which you do that is on you, but certain industries kind of have that as table stakes in terms of what it means to recruit for that industry. So if you're recruiting for finance, iBanking, PE out of New York, it's pretty standard that those people go up to New York every Friday to set up meetings with banks and really get to know people in those target companies. So I would talk to second years, I would talk to people in the industry that you intend to go into and kind of understand what the recruiting cycle looks like for you, because I will tell you that my friends that did iBank recruiting out of New York were going up there every Friday for probably several months. I recruited for tech. We did everything over video conferences. I never had to spend a dime on getting over to those companies. So it's a really, really different spectrum depending on what you're looking for. But if you talk to anybody in those industries, they'll have a very good sense of what is the standard cost of recruiting. And considering most people coming to Wharton are looking to change jobs, that's probably something that you need to just factor into your budget and is not going to have a ton of flexibility on. Social events, on the other hand, has a ton of flexibility. I would say I opted somewhat highly on social events. They can happen either through clubs that you might join, though they will have social events that either are free or have some kind of discounted entry tickets. There's a lot of stuff going on in Philadelphia that either clubs will organize and take advantage of, or people in your class will organize and take advantage of. So, anytime you're doing an activity, if you're going bowling, if you're going to golf, like axe throwing has recently opened here, all of that does cost money. Same with the clubs. If they're going to throw a party or host a, sushi making kind of dinner, like that probably comes with a little bit of a price tag as well. So thinking through, what are you getting from the clubs? What are the additional costs associated with actually using the programming that they're putting together, that will help you make decisions on what types of clubs you really want to join and what value you're getting out of. And then also thinking through, how many entertainment things can I do in a single month based on my budget. So just make sure you want to enjoy Philadelphia, you want to enjoy your time here, you want to meet people. Give yourself some buffer to do that so you don't feel like you're really falling behind. But I will tell you, as a second year, it's very comfortable for people to say, I've opted out of, going to a dance lesson or going to a tango class because I didn't want to pay $50 for that. So instead, people are going to come over to my house and we're going to do something else. There's a lot of ways to have fun on the cheap, and there's a lot of ways to have fun on the not cheap. And you really just have to find who's aligned with that and be comfortable with, stating it. I would say no one is going to give you any flack for making one decision or the other. So you really need to think about, how much time do you want to spend, visiting friends, going to weddings, visiting, family members, or doing some more like personal activities with a significant other, and then how are those going to factor into your overall budget? Because I think that part is very, very varied across the board of students here. There are some people that have to go to China when they want to go home, so that can be a really substantial expense, whereas other people just drive 15 minutes and that's not a substantial expense. So you need to think about how are you also going to manage your life outside of Wharton, and then how is that going to impact what you're spending at Wharton? And that can really start to catch up on people. So overall, I don't think I was necessarily perfect in some of my financial decision makings, and I definitely think it's a dynamic process. I think, as I alluded to with the leadership venture, some things that I thought were too expensive then became justified, and it's constantly trading off between activities or trading off between eating out versus not eating out, or going to an event versus not going to an event, and finding kind of creative ways to save money in some places or splurge in other places. So you really need to figure out what are your key priorities here, what are you trying to get out of it, and then how does money play into that, and what are the trade-offs that might come down the road. So Wharton's a great place. I hope you take advantage of it. I hope you love it, but keep it in mind.
Some great information from Michelle. A lot of the things mentioned from the prior two students are expenses that may exist at other institutions that you're looking into. The one thing we hope to do here is partner with you to help you experience exactly what you want to experience when you come to school here. I want to get in a little about how you're going to fund your education. The first step is pre-matriculation funding sources. So this is part of our Wharton Fellowship Program and awarded when you're admitted to the program with your admissions letter. A list here is included, and I'll go into detail on a few of them, but I would defer to our website, which has a breakdown of all of these specific funds available for both domestic, international students, and varied backgrounds. The focus is on high academics, leadership, social impact. We look at emerging economies. The Forte Fellowship is specific to our women applicants for great leadership and the empowerment of women. The Howard E. Mitchell Fellowship, which is for underrepresented minorities who are applying to the program. And these are all awarded based on merit when looking at your application for admissions. We also have many other donor-funded fellowships, which are awarded for specific backgrounds, skill sets, industries, or anything else in your background that may lead to these awards. After you're accepted into the program, there are other potential revenue sources which you can attain while in the program. These aren't guaranteed to any specific students, and these, while you're in the program, are through a separate application process. They include academic fellowships for the top academic performers in the program. There's many entrepreneurial awards and fellowships. There's leadership fellowships, departmental fellowships, financial need-based fellowships, and we mentioned earlier the Global Immersion Program. Short for that is GIP. We started a program which selects 2 ambassadors for each program, and what that does, it covers your full cost of the Global Immersion Program. So it's a program fee that you won't have to pay. Finally, there's a few external fellowships such as the Whitney M. Young and the Twigo Fellowship. Next, we'll discuss the work opportunities which are available. There's many fellow programs which include a stipend. There's a range in earnings you would get for that, and also a different amount of time spent on each of these. So when it gets to personalizing your experience here, this is one area where you can really determine how much time you have to allocate and how much revenue you need in return. Next is the student work opportunities. And it goes across Wharton in our various academic departments, but also at Penn and the Small Business Development Center. When we look at all these work opportunities, there's hundreds of options while you're a student in the program. And students can take on multiple sources during the program, both in your first year and second year. Some are very strict in their time frames, others are wide open to what fits in your schedule. The final aspect that you should consider is potential earnings from your summer internship. Following your first year, you will be working during that time before going into your second year. A lot of the savings can be used to fund your second year of your program. So it's important that when you set your goals up front, to consider this income stream to be able to fund a portion of your second year's costs. Next, I'm going to turn over to Lakeisha Bishop, our Associate Director of Financial Aid, to discuss some of the external revenue sources which exist, including student loans. Lakeisha?
Sure, thanks. Yes, thanks, Jeff. So again, my name is Lakeisha Bishop. So for those students who are thinking about how are they going to cover their education, of course, we have the fellowship program, which hopefully everyone will receive funding. But in case you do not receive funding from the fellowship program, we also have external funding sources that we provide to you once you are admitted into the program, and also sources that are on our our MBA website. So if you get a chance, definitely make sure that you do a little bit of research and visit our website, because there's a lot of good information. There are very great external resources for students from different countries, students from different backgrounds, students who are veterans. So as far as information that we provide and we think that you should look at, profellow.com is a really good website. It's free to register. They have a lot of opportunities, some are very school specific, but a lot of opportunities that could help you with your search if you're thinking about applying for school now or applying for school 2 years out. We definitely recommend our office that you start your research now. There are also fellowships such as the Paul and Daisy Soros, which offer a good amount of money for students who are new Americans. There's also the Thorne Fellowship for students who are residents of the UK. So there are a lot of good opportunities that we think that you should start researching now. If you are thinking about school once you are admitted into the program, or even after you matriculate into the program. And then also, in addition, we provide additional resources to you once you are admitted into our program, and then we are also a resource for you. So right now I'll talk about student loan options. There are many student loan options, and now I guess is the best time to attend school because interest rates are really, really good on private loans. But we have many students who are interested in federal loans, which offer really good benefits as far as fixed interest rates. You can borrow up to the cost of attendance. If you're coming from a non-traditional background and you haven't had a chance to earn a lot of income, federal loans give you that flexibility and allow you to really take advantage of the school, and it's a way to finance your education. Private student loans offer really good interest rates, a little bit better than federal loans. You know, a lot of our students will ask which is the favorite with Wharton students, and a lot of times it's private loans because of the lower interest rates. They can range from 2.8% to 8%. All of this is dependent on your credit, of course. So the first step is to make sure that your FICO score, your credit is good, regardless of which school you apply to, and that your credit history is in a great condition so that you can get the best interest rate that lenders can offer you. For international students, unfortunately, federal loans are not available to you. You have to be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident to apply for federal loans. But for international students, Quorum is our program. So Quorum Federal Credit Union is the Wharton's program for international students. It allows you to borrow a large percent of the budget to finance your education, to finance your living expenses and your tuition and fees. And it also offers you a competitive interest rate. Additional information is provided, of course, after you are admitted to the program. Another resource for international students is Prodigy Finance. They are based in the UK, and they offer really good competitive rates as well. And of course, you can borrow up to the student budget as well, or 90% of the student budget to finance your education. So if you are from all over the world, you are eligible to borrow loan funding from Prodigy and also Quorum, and also U.S. lenders if you have a cosigner. There's another program that is recently new to our list. It's called Southeast Bank Global Select, which also offers really good competitive rates and allows you to borrow up to the student budget. So, and unfortunately, we're not able to offer everyone a fellowship, but if you're not able to get a fellowship, there are external scholarships depending on your country, and there are also loan programs available to you to help you finance your education.
Great. Thank you, Lakeisha.
Sure.
And I think in summing up what we've talked about so far, the big thing is personalizing your financial situation. Because as we've seen, there's many different products. It's all dependent based on international, domestic, your background. So it's important to research and look into these different avenues. I also want to give a list of some potential tools and resources both before and while you're in the program. Please reference our website, the Wharton Financial Aid website. Everything we've discussed today is on there and with additional details. So anything we can't answer for you today, it's the great first place to start for any financial aid-based questions. Next is the Career Management website. This has a lot of great industry information as well as statistics about your internships, the potential costs you could get by industry, as well as what to expect after you graduate. This is in addition, of course, to the admissions website. So it's important to use all these websites and the resources that are out there for you. Next is we continue to expand the tools available around financial aid. Whether it's resources where it summarizes the work options, whether it's the funding sources, or whether it's these multiple loan options that Lakeisha spoke of. And also holding our financial aid sessions, both during Welcome Weekend, through webinars, and while you're in the program. While you're in the program, we offer one-on-one advising to all students. So it's very important to take us up on that offer. That's where we can really sit down, look at your financial situation, and figure out the best path forward whenever you have questions around this. Finally, review the external sources out there. This goes into a couple points that Lakeisha mentioned. Look at your credit score. View your credit report if you're a domestic student. If international, look at how those other vendors, such as Prodigy, will view your credit situation to see where you would stand. Also look at loan comparisons that are available publicly. And finally, as mentioned earlier by, I think, both students, look at those budgeting tools that are out there. There's a few really cool things that are out there which will help you get through the first stages when there's a lot of unknowns. Finally, as I mentioned a few times, the goal here is to maximize your investment in yourself as well as your experience while you're in the program. We really don't want you to miss out on things that you didn't know were there before attending the program. So establish your goals and priorities clearly up front. This will allow you to dig into that research, use our office, and use the MBA program in general to figure out your path forward. Next, our current students, alumni, and us in the advising office are your resource. Use us for any questions you may have as you go through with your plan. Analyze all your funding options. So this includes not only the fellowships, not only loans, but also scholarships, sponsorships, saving personal funds, anything you can do to really get yourself in the best position to attend school. And finally, as you're going through, reevaluate and adjust, whether it's because you come here and you want to switch careers, or your priorities change while you're in the program, such as Michelle mentioned in the earlier video. You may find opportunity here that you didn't know existed. So it's important to put yourself in a position to take advantage of that when that comes ahead of you. So that concludes the summary of the financial aid process and planning for your MBA. First note I want to say is that this is recorded and will be posted to the website in approximately a week. So if you came in late or missed part of the session, you can feel free to watch it at that point, including the Q&A. So we've been receiving questions throughout, so we'll start to go through those, and feel free to type them and submit them as we go. So the first question, how to apply for a fellowship, and are fellowships available to non-U.S. citizens? So there's two separate ways to think about how do I apply for a fellowship. Before you matriculate, our Wharton Fellowship Program goes out and will award based on your application of admissions. So everything in your application is used to consider you for that first round of fellowships. The second part, while you're a student in the program, does include an evaluation process that you can apply for while a current student. Domestic versus international, up front, there's both. So there's fellowships that go out based on merit to both domestic and international students, and there's also some donor-funded fellowships which can be applied to either domestic or international.
So the second question is, does Wharton offer a public service loan forgiveness program? And we do. We have a really good program with our social impact, Wharton Social Impact Initiatives. Their information is on the website. You can actually view the program details and how many recipients were selected last year, the background of the recipient. So it's a really good program that's offered after you complete the program, and you can apply to it within 5 years of graduation. The amount of the grant would range from $10,000 to $20,000, and the funds were sent directly to your lender to help pay off your loan balance.
Great question. So the next one, what's the difference between federal and private loans? It's a big question. So the one way to look at it is they're all going to have different terms. You'll want to compare based on origination fees, based on the percentage rate, and payback at the end. Another key difference is that federal loans are guaranteed to only domestic students based on the cost of tuition. Private loans you'll have to apply for separately with each individual company. So the process itself is different in applying for these loans, but in the end they go to fund your education in the same way. So the next question is, at what time do you award fellowship funding? So similarly, when you receive that first offer up front, when you're admitted to the program, that's the Wharton Fellowship Program funding, which is awarded to matriculated students. After that, it's awarded throughout the first 2 years of the program. The bulk of it is in the second year. So such as the financial need fellowships, it's an application process where you submit basically your background, your story, as well as the financial constraints you faced while in the program, including what you're looking at going forward. Our Wharton Fellowship teams reviews those applications and then makes awards based on that. So the next question, can you talk about the average debt load that students graduate with? This is, again, a real personalized topic. So we see ranges of people taking on nothing in debt all the way up to full tuition and fees plus living expenses. So when we circle back to that original one-year budget of $105,000, there's students that take out that full amount for both of their years in the program. There's also students that can use their savings, sponsorships they may or may not have received from their company, fellowships, outside scholarships, revenue sources while they're in a program to decrease that amount or help fund the program in a different way. So the next question is, how do you determine which students will receive a fellowship? So I'll speak to the Wharton Fellowship Program, which is awarded based on the admissions. What we do is we look at merit as defined by the admissions group based on who they admit into the program. when we look at the top candidates in the class, we'll evaluate each of their files individually based on how they performed in their application, their interviews, and the full admitting process. At that point, we'll allocate our budget out to the students that have shown the highest leadership, the highest academic, the highest professional backgrounds, and also unique experiences, and then dive into those other fellowships that were listed on the prior slide.
All right, the next question is, what factors do you suggest students consider when deciding between federal direct loans, private lenders such as Common Bond and SoFi? That's a really good question, and it will definitely come down to how much research you do as far for different loan options. So SoFi, Common Bond, they're really good questions. A lot of our students really good lenders. A lot of our students refinance with them. A lot of our students borrow loans for them in school. They're really competitive. But federal loans, again, offer you fixed interest rates and benefits such as income-based repayments, loan consolidation. You can extend your payments, pay-as-you-go type programs. They can also offer you public service loan forgiveness through the federal government. So there are a lot of good, unique options with federal loans that you should consider. Private lenders, again, give you the very best interest rates that they can offer you. Most of them offer a fixed interest rate and floating interest rates as well. It depends on your credit. But Common Bond, SoFi, Wells Fargo, Citizens Bank, they're all very similar. And it's worth, of course, taking a look at their websites to see what is the difference. And we typically recommend that students apply to several of them when they are researching loan options after being admitted, so that they can find out which lender can give them the best option or the best loan option.
So next question. Obviously, there are many funding options, but on average, how much financial aid or scholarship can one expect? And what percentage can we really depend on these financial aid? So I think up front, there's one thing I want to break out into two. We're not a financial need-based fellowship program. So it's determined by merit, so it is dependent on the class that comes in. I can say that between round 1 and round 2, there's no difference for awarding based on when you apply. So you're not at better odds of getting an award early versus at worse odds getting it late. You have the same ability to receive those awards. And as far as the percentage that can expect the award, it really ranges, but about a third of the class will receive a fellowship up front. And then, in addition, there's the other availability of fellowships while you're in the program. Okay, looks like we've answered all the questions. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope you learned a little about planning for your MBA program from a financial perspective. I want to thank Lakeisha, as well as the students who spoke earlier, for giving you a great background on what to look for in this program.